Welcome, low ego action heroes. This is Debbie Levitt from Delta CX. We are a full service CX and UX agency and consultancy. I am live from my working vacation, so please ignore the background. And hopefully the air conditioning isn't too loud. Let me know if it is. Hello, Pradeep and Mohammed. So I'm going to be here for about an hour taking your questions, and you can ask your questions in the live chat, or you can send them to the link that you'll see on deltacx.com/links. We answer questions in the order in which I get them, and I really see this as a free mentoring time. You can ask me any question other than to look at some of your work, which is probably confidential, and I'm happy to give you my opinions, my experience, my knowledge, for whatever you can do with that. Internet has been a little bit funky in this leg of our vacation, so I hope that we'll be able to make it through the stream. And before we get going with our first question, as always, I want to thank all of the low ego action heroes who have been donating to the channel. This is unfortunately an outdated list. I have a newer list on my computer at home. But thank you to everybody who has been donating some dollars to the channel monthly. It's very appreciated, totally optional, but I really do appreciate it as it keeps me in streaming software and chocolate chips. And we've just passed 7,000 subscribers here on YouTube, so I hope everybody will consider, subscribing over on YouTube. I am still shadow banned, so we need your love over on YouTube. So I'm going to jump in and start with our first question, which looks like this. How do you recruit research participants for a product that doesn't exist yet? Let's say we already have our screening criteria and we know who we want to talk to. The problem we're facing is trying to talk to standard users rather than power users of similar existing products. Okay, so first of all, this doesn't sound that hard to me. So if you know who you want to talk to, that's a great first step. Sometimes people say, this product doesn't exist yet. We don't even know who's going to use it. Who do we research with? Okay, that's a little harder. But if you do have a target audience in mind, it's totally fine if you don't have a product yet, because hopefully this is generative research, and we're going to be doing some early research into people, habits, behaviors, tasks, perspectives, context, etc., and it would be solution agnostic. We don't want to just be looking at competitors' systems because chances are they suck, and we don't want to just look at our early ideas because chances are they suck. So we want to make sure we're doing generative qualitative research. Okay, so we know who we want to talk to and we have screening criteria. How do we talk to standard users and not power users? You would have to define what's a standard user and what's a power user. And then you would have to put that into your screener survey. So for example, if a power user is someone who uses it 3 times a day versus 3 times a month, then maybe your power user is about frequency, and you can ask a question in your screener survey to determine how often they use these competing systems or something else. If it's about savviness, maybe it's about how long they've used the other system, and you assume that people who've been using it a long time are more savvy with it, who may or may not be power users. It's really up to your definition of power users. I can't say, always define power user this way, and then screen for it. The bottom line is you're going to define power user in your unique way, and then you're going to have to add it to your screener survey and check for the right people. Also, if you can, try to find some people who are doing this task and aren't using a competitor system. Maybe they're using Excel and note paper and sticky notes on walls and texting a friend or whatever it is. Try to find people beyond just the competitor systems. Otherwise, what normally happens is you run other people through the competitor systems, you find where the competitor systems are missing something and you build something a little bit better, but it's really just an incremental improvement, if you're lucky, on what the competitor has. But it's not necessarily going to be a disruption or an innovation or really leap past the competition. So that's why I would recommend more of a task analysis approach if it's applicable, and making sure that you are looking at more of the full arc of the task and of the user experience, whether or not they're in a competitor's system. Especially because if people really love the competitor system, they may not switch to yours. There's got to be an ocean of people out there who need something like this and aren't using the competitor system. Maybe these are people we could win. So make sure you're looking at them too. Hi, Sunil. So that is our first question for today, and that is the only question I got ahead of time. So if you have a question, feel free to ask it. You would probably be next on the list. Again, you can ask it in the chat. It'll pop up on the screen and I'll copy and paste it. Sorry about the bad lighting, but the sun is changing here, so it's very bright over here and very dark over here. And I have a light in front of me, but it's really not helping. So I apologize for my strange appearance. I look like I'm burning from the sun here and kind of dark and mysterious here. So another thing to remember is that we're going to be changing some of the times of these shows. So make sure you're checking the Google Calendar that is linked from deltacx.com/links. We're going to have new show times starting in a week or two because hopefully I'll be starting my new job, and that's going to throw off the show times because I would be working now and can't do the show at its normal time. So make sure you're checking the calendar. The next show that we'll be doing is a special Friday show this week. I'll be meeting with Stephanie Walter in person, and we're going to do an AMA like this from her home office. So I'm very excited. Drew is here. Good to see you, Drew. And Drew says, power users, let me just stretch my screen out a little bit so I can see this better. Power users also relevant to screen readers. Someone new to assistive technology is going to interact with your design in a dramatically different way. One may struggle in ways the other won't. Yeah, this was covered in chapter, was it 12 or 13 in my new book, Customers Know You Suck. We must remember that we can't just sprinkle on accessibility later. That's not a thing. It doesn't work, and it's really an insult, and it's certainly not human-centered or user-centered. We want to make sure that from the very earliest research we're doing, and that's great for the question we just had because they don't have a product yet. So now is the right time to be talking about accessibility and acting on it. So you want to make sure that when you are getting your pool of people for your research, that this is a diverse pool. Thank you to Drew for reminding me to talk about this. You don't want to get 12 white guys. You want to make sure that you're getting, depending upon who your target audience is, you might want different ages, you might want different genders, you might want different ethnicities. They might be people in different countries. And of course, you always want to meet some people, chapter 13, thank you. You might want to meet some people with, you should meet some people with accessibility needs. And remember, that is a rainbow of different things. That could be visual issues, it could be hearing, it could be mobility, it could be cognitive, it could be behavioral or emotional, and very often it's multiple ones. So don't forget people with ADHD, autism, dyslexia, people who don't use a mouse and use a keyboard, or people, as Drew mentioned, who use screen readers or have their phone reading stuff out to them. So you want to make sure you're learning how these people are doing whatever this task is. They're probably going to have plenty of issues with however they're doing this now, since it's unfortunately so rare that anyone has truly designed for all of these issues. So this can also be a point of differentiation for your future product and company, that you can be the company that welcomes the larger audience by making sure it works well for screen readers, for low vision, for color blindness, color contrast issues, mobility issues, etc. So again, remember that it's not just the right thing to do and the ethical thing to do, but it also opens you up to a larger audience than perhaps competitors have opened themselves to, because chances are sometimes competitors have done a good job with accessibility, but I would say it's unfortunately pretty rare. So until people live up to their ethics and their values and truly are for everybody and are uh, living out DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, it's unfortunately a differentiation point. And we made the point in chapter 13, or Sherry Byrne-Haber did, that someone who is new to assistive devices or systems is likely to behave differently than someone who has used them longer or most or all of their life. So read, if you don't have Customers Know You Suck, go out and get it. It's available for as little as $1 on my website, cxcc.to/CKYS, all lowercase. And you can grab the digital version for as little as $1, or you can jump on over to Amazon and get yourself some paper or a Kindle or me reading the audiobook. So lots of choices. This is Office Hours Ask Me Anything. I normally take your questions for about an hour, but I have no questions. So I think my question to you is, do you have any questions for me? If not, we can certainly wrap up the show after one question and just say it's a nice warm day and everyone is running outside and playing outside and doing whatever they do. But we were just outside, so I'm just all hot and sweaty. We were playing beach beach tennis, which is probably not very tennisy, but it was beachy. Oh, hi, Karen. Karen has a question, which is a running joke. Karen always has a question, but at least Karen always has good questions. So that's good news. So I will take another sip of water while Karen writes it out. Hmm. My cup matches our little notes here. Okay. We're 40 seconds delayed, so it's not that Karin is a slow typer. I know he's not. Um, let's see. Let's check our show schedule. Oh, here we go. We've got stuff from Karin. Please hold. Let me copy and paste this into the document that will end up the YouTube description so that you can always see all of the questions that were asked in order. And then I will put this up on the screen. Okay. Here we go. So here is the question. And it says, how can I test my marketplace solution? Let's say I have conducted my generative research and there's an opportunity to create a marketplace for a niche segment. The point is, how can I be sure that these people will switch to my marketplace? Okay, so you can't. You can't, because ultimately the success of any product or service or experience, which would include a marketplace, is going to be subject to a lot more than, hey, I see an opportunity. It's going to be, what is this? How was it designed? How does it work? How is it better or different than its competitors? What does it cost? Is it difficult or easy to learn? And then, of course, you have all of the aspects of marketing. You might even build the better marketplace that is amazing and fairly priced and so fantastic. How will anybody know it exists? Now you have to invest money in marketing to make sure that people know it exists. Normally, or at least traditionally, this would be some sort of advertising. Google AdWords, Instagram ads, targeted online ads if it's an online marketplace. So there's really no way to know if this is if going to be successful and if people will switch. Sometimes if there's an existing marketplace that people like and a new one comes along, people just use both. They either find that they like both, or they want to try both, or they just want a presence on both, or it's not, would they really have to give up the other marketplace to use yours, or could yours be added to whatever they're doing and however they're doing it? Like people used eBay and then you had Amazon. Well, they didn't necessarily stop using eBay, and eBay became kind of more niche. And so you went to eBay for certain things and Amazon for certain things. Then you have Etsy. You go to eBay for this, Amazon for that, and Etsy for this other thing. So, people don't necessarily have to stop using one thing. Um, so, Karen, am I Drew, I'll add your question to the list. Thank you for uh, putting it up there. We'll answer that one next. Karen, am I close to what you're saying? I know you're probably hoping for some sort of magic solution, like, yes, here is the special test you can run that will tell you everyone will switch to your marketplace. But ultimately, this often comes down to marketing, because you can have great design of a great system, but if nobody knows it's there, it can fall apart. And especially if this is a two-sided marketplace. Say, for example, someone is selling something and someone is buying something. Then you still have an issue with, now you have to attract two audiences. You have to attract people with things to sell and people who want to buy those things. That, in a sense, is even harder because it doesn't work if you only attract one. You can attract sellers, but if nobody's there to buy it, the sellers might say, this isn't worth our effort to put things for sale here. Why bother? Nobody's coming to this marketplace. We saw this a lot in the 2000s when eBay was really hot and Amazon was heating up. No, I guessed the answer. Thank you. Okay. When eBay was really hot and Amazon was heating up, there were like 50 new marketplaces seemingly overnight, and everybody claimed they were going to be some sort of special corner of something. I remember being called in to consult on one in 2008, and I actually told them their idea wasn't going to work and they shouldn't pursue it. And they did anyway, and they failed. So that is the bad news. Okay, Mateo, I see your question. We'll put it up after Drew's question, so please hold on because I do these in order. So let's put up Drew's question. And Drew says, do you think that there are companies that are ready to hire accessibility people that specialize in the space between accessibility and design to help them work it into their processes? This is not my area of expertise. I would like to say that I do see some of these jobs existing. I do see accessibility specialists or disability specialists or DEI specialists focused on accessibility. I do see some jobs popping up now and then for that. I don't know specifically where those people are placed in the organization. I don't know if they're closer to design or strategy or engineering. It is a great question because there should be accessibility people in all of these areas. I mean, to me, everyone on a cross-functional team should be trained in accessibility. In that sense, we wouldn't necessarily need one specialist to come in and try to herd all the sheep. It would be much better if everybody knew as much as possible about accessibility. And that way we're not relying on one person holding the keys to the knowledge or to the kingdom. So I think for now we tend to see more of that specialized job where that person might be an internal consultant. I hope in the future everybody would be an accessibility specialist, even though, of course, not everybody has any of those disabilities, diagnoses, or conditions. So we always have to make sure we're working with people who have been trained on accessibility and understand it, but then we need to hire more of the people who are living those things so that they can give their perspectives on concepts, designs, prototypes, and eventually dev builds and live products. So that's my opinion on that. For whatever you might agree or disagree, but That's just a prediction. I don't really know enough about this to say, oh, yeah, this is where it's going. I don't know where it's going. Mateo asks the question that we get pretty much every day. What's your point of view on LLM, large language models? How will technology like ChatGPT affect customer experience? Okay, and then we have a great question from Chi Huat. Thank you. I have a great answer for that. So let me put that on the list. Hold on. Okay, so ChatGPT and LLM and machine learning and fake AI, because it's not really artificially intelligent, it's still machine learning. So, what do I think about that for customer experience? I think that we're going to kind of see a little bit of a weird curve. We're going to see a huge curve where a lot of people try to adopt it. They think that, oh wow, so many things in CX and UX can be automated. We're going to have it write questions. We're going to have it analyze surveys. We're going to have it analyze interviews. We're going to have it pretend to be users, and we're going to ask them what they like. I think we're going to see a huge, what's the word I'm looking for? A huge adoption of the current technologies. But the problem, and I've got an article coming on this, is that we're not going to know that that was probably the wrong thing to do for 6 to 12 months, because let's say we use ChatGPT or some other system, and we do something bad, whatever it is. We pretend to interview fake users. We ask fake users what they want. We make crappy personas and we whatever. Let's say we do something crappy and inaccurate. Let's just call it inaccurate due to something an LLM or ML gave us back. Let's just call it inaccurate. It now sets our project up for possible small or large failure because we started with inaccurate or skewed or wacky data, or guesses and assumptions that some model said, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. People will want that. So the problem is we're going to spend a lot of time strategizing that, designing that, prototyping it, testing it, giving it to engineering to build, putting it out there, and then monitoring it. Whether it's a small experiment or a larger release, we're really not going to know that we went in the wrong direction for 6 months if we're lucky. Probably 12 if we're not as lucky. And so I think the problem is that we're going to see people using it, but I think it's going to take things in the wrong direction until the technology is significantly better, which I don't think we're close to just yet. I don't think we're as close as other people think we're as close. So I think eventually how these models can best affect things like CX and UX would be eventually they might be better at parsing survey data and catching the right information. Right now, we have examples being posted on LinkedIn all the time, especially from Dr. Nick, where he's showing that these models are missing a lot of information. And if you ask it to summarize things, you might get a poor summary. You might get a summary that's missing key points. So in short, I could give a lot more examples, but I would say in short, where we are today, June 2023, is it does not replace what I do. You can't say, oh wow, AI, LLM, ML is so good, Debbie doesn't have to interview a user or Debbie doesn't have to analyze that data. It's not there yet. Mateo says, at the company I work at, it's usually human factors or where the design system sits, sometimes design. Oh, you're talking about accessibility. Chiwat says, I realized I spent too much time trying to write the right prompt to get the answers I think I can trust. Yeah, I had someone semi-bitch me out on LinkedIn when I wrote about a prompt that I found in an email app I tried. It said like, oh, give us a prompt and we'll write your email for you. So I wrote, can't wait to see you. I figured it would just write a short, simple email like, hey, it's been a while since we've gotten together and I'm excited to see you soon. Love, Debbie. Well, it ended up writing like a page and it made up like, hey, I've had a really great time lately reading books. And I was like, what? I don't read any books. I mean, it like made up an entire life for me. And it was very, very strange. And there were all these people who came out of the woodwork to say, this was my fault and I'm just a dinosaur and I didn't do the right prompt. And it's like, hey, if this truly were artificially intelligent, then hypothetically, asking it to write me an email that's can't wait to see you would write a great email. Well, I mean, why are we making excuses for the technology and blaming me? That doesn't sound like we have our CX or UX hats on. Anne says using it for research is a massive example of the UX immaturity Darren Hood is always going on about. Zero critical thinking. There are things it's brilliant for, but research ain't it. Yeah, so that to me that's the bottom line. I can see how in the future this technology could help us analyze large sets of customer data that currently we do manually. But I'm not going to let it do that until it's good at it. There's no reason for me to take that work off my plate and give it to a person or a machine that's bad at it. I just can't think of a good reason to do that, even if we think it's cool. It's not cool enough. So, so that's where I am on these things. I have yet to I believe in their future, but I'm not sold on it now. And I think it's more likely that it's going to take us in the wrong direction, especially when you see things like you don't have to interview users, just create a fake digital twin or synthetic user and ask them what they like. I've already written articles about this. You can go Google AI users are neither AI nor users, which is one of my Medium articles that speaks to this. I think we might have also done it on the YouTube channel. You can probably find me reading it out loud on YouTube, and discussing it. Okay, let's move on to Chi Watt's question. There we go. About the quadrant exercise from episode 190. How could I use it to make stakeholders realize that they know little about our customers and use it as an exercise to get buy-in for generative research? That is part of its purpose. So yes, if you saw that episode, that question might be half answered, but you could certainly run that exercise, and you probably just don't want to pick users in general. That's probably too broad. So pick some area of whatever your company does or makes that relates to the users doing something. And let's say you run this exercise. So Chihuat, I always forget what you do. I'm so sorry. I think it's financial. I think it's finance. I think it's finance, but I can't remember. So, but I don't know what level it's at, and I don't know if it's like simple savings accounts or checking or things like that. But you can always say, um, hey, we want to take a look at where there's room for us to learn more about our target customers so that we can make sure that we come up with fresh, innovative things for them. So before we innovate, we're going to run an exercise and we're going to just take a look at what do we know and what don't we know about our existing target user. So when we think about that target user and we think about checking, savings, investing, pick one thing just so that it's got some sort of finite thing, so that it's not all users through all of finance. I would just pick a thing and then just say, okay, now let's take a look at what do we think we know? What are our guesses or assumptions? What do we wish we knew about these people? You can always add another field to it that says, what we're sure we know, or what we know, or something like that. And you'd have to be a really good facilitator to then look at it later and determine which of those things do we really know and they're true, and which of these things don't we know. Or you might have make a separate section and say, what do we know and how do we know it? And that way, anybody who puts something up there, users like to open 2 savings accounts. Well, hey, can the person who put up this sticky note please say how they know that? Just because if we find that on average, people open 2 savings accounts. That doesn't mean that they want to. We might have been running some sort of promotion. For example, I have a savings account, and I'm one of those people that Wells Fargo opened up an account for that I didn't even totally understand that I was getting and I didn't even need, and they ended up getting sued for that. They were trying to make their numbers look good. That doesn't mean I need multiple savings accounts, but they were trying to open them for me because it made them reach some KPIs. So I think that without remembering exactly what you do, I think that you can create an exercise and maybe you can just frame it like, hey, we want to make sure we're doing fresh, innovative things. People love the word innovation. Fresh, innovative things for our customers, or compete better against competitors. Let's focus on these target audiences and this area of product. What do we wish we knew? What might be outdated, like pre-pandemic? What are some assumptions we have about these people, and stuff like that. So maybe try it like that. Let's see. Karen has a question that I think is pasted here over 3 messages. So let me clean that up and get it ready. Yes, I work for a bank. Oh, business banking. Okay, great. So you might say, hey, let's think a moment about our small and medium businesses. If that's like a big target audience for your bank. Hey, or if they deal in much bigger people, then hey, let's deal with our large enterprise business banking customers. And let's take a look at this particular area of product. Payroll, savings, investments, employee benefits, whatever it is. Now let's think about who are our target audiences. Start with that. Who's the target audience? Because in some of these cases, it's not even who they think it is. If you have employee benefits, then who uses that system? Lots of different people. So even that can open up some questions. Try that. I'll try to remember that you do business banking. Okay, Karen has a question. Let's drop down the font a bit. Okay, it says, in generative research, there are tasks that occur over time. For example, planning a trip may take a month and involve several people, such as agencies and friends. To fully understand the context, is it recommended to recruit people who've planned a trip within the past month for an interview, or recruit people who are planning to go on a trip and give them a task to plan and observe them? It's a super question. You're really talking about methods here. And I would say there isn't necessarily one right method. It really depends on some of the time that you have and some of what you want to learn. In some cases, some people in this situation might do a diary study with some interviews. So the idea is you understand that this happens over time, and you would tell people every time they do something related to planning this trip, please journal it or diary it and send that in to us so that we know what you were working on when. And if you collaborate with someone or talk to someone about the trip, let us, put it down in your journal or diary, send that in to us. You do get a lot of data. You have to deal with it very manually, and there's always downsides to diary studies, which is that, especially ones that go on for weeks or a long period of time, people get lazy. They start lazy and they get lazier. They're usually not going to tell you every single time they wrote about the trip or thought about the trip or spoke about the trip or took a few minutes during their lunch break to do a little Googling about the trip. So you do miss some of the steps and experiences that people have because they are just not going to tell you about all of them. So you have to understand that with a long process like that, or a long process like saving money, which doesn't just happen one time, these are things that I see an anonymous question coming in. Thank you. We'll handle that one next. These are things that are just difficult to observe. Um, uh, oh, and Chihuat has a question. So Chihuat, we're going to put your question after the anonymous one that just came in, since I try to take things in order. So hold on while I copy paste everything. Please hold. Okay, great. Okay, great. So back to Karin. So you can also try the what you said. You can take people who recently took a trip or whatever, maybe planned the trip or took the trip, and you can say, okay, let's walk through what you did to plan this trip. Same kind of problem. You know, Larry talks about this in his book, which we haven't published yet, but we're hoping I'm definitely sure it'll come over the summer. We are doing a good job wrapping it up in July. So I'm confident we'll see it in August. We'll see. But in Larry's coming book, he talks about this type of thing where you can still get people not remembering certain steps that they took and not thinking about workarounds or not thinking about every time they planned the vacation or spoke to a collaborator. I mean, when I think about even on the vacation, the working vacation we're on now, we have a little bit of a mystery in that we have no place to stay our last night. We're in a camper. So we're trying to figure out how far can we drive and where are we going to stay, especially when it's going to be heavy season here and it's going to be hard to find a place, and most camper places won't let you stay only one night. They're more for multiple nights. We've been working on this for weeks. If you got me in an interview and said, okay, tell me about how you and your husband planned this weird last night of your vacation, I'm not even sure where we would start. Where do I start to tell you that this is something we've wrestled with for weeks and we continue wrestling with today? So, it takes a lot more planning. And, okay. And hi, Chantel. We've got a great question from you, and I'll put it on the end. There are two questions before you, plus the one on the screen, so please be patient. But thank you for your question. So, Karen, this is a hard one. I'd love to work with you personally on this, but I think the reality is that you have to know that whatever research you do, it's going to be a best approximation of what this task really looks like. You're going to end up missing steps, and you're going to end up getting some broader brush strokes on things rather than the very fine detail of, yes, this week I thought about this 6 times and I Googled 10 times and I bookmarked 20 things. So I would say, depending upon how much time you have, you might be doing a combination of interviews, possibly the diary study, but it's hard. Some people plan a vacation. I mean, they say the average person who goes to Disney World, Florida, saves up for a year and a half and is planning for months. So, yeah, I think we have to really think about it. Malika says, I recently did a similar project. I asked them about their recent trip and asked them backward. Where did you go? Then how did you find the place? Interesting technique. Again, all of these techniques will have some success. You will get some picture of the user's task and experience, you'll get some idea of the opportunities of where a system can improve upon that. But when you have long processes like this, like saving money, buying a car, planning a wedding, going on a trip, these are just so hard to study in small amounts of time. You know, we could be anthropologists and follow people around for 2 years, but, most people don't want to wait for that. Okay, the anonymous question says, why is it harder to get into UX now compared to 10 years ago? What also caused the increased demand now? Did the pandemic also have anything to do with increased job and demand growth? Wow, I feel like this question undoes itself in the middle. There isn't increased demand now. I think there's less demand now. So there's multiple questions in here. Let's answer all of them before we move on to the next question. So why is it harder to get into UX now compared to 10 years ago? Well, let's talk about what it looked like 10 years ago. Picture yourself 2013. Thanks, Mateo. Um, Picture it. It's 2013. Chances are many of you hadn't even heard of UX yet. So UX was not new, but it was still quite specialized. And it was getting pretty hot, especially because in Silicon Valley, a lot of investors and venture capitalists were telling people, hey, you need, if you're going to be doing a startup, you need a really good user experience. You need product market fit. And so we started saying these things. We weren't just talking about build something, build anything. We were talking about product market fit and building something that people will need and use and pay for and stay with. And so whether you were at a startup or you were at a bigger company, there was more of an investment in UX. Sure, it wasn't always understood. Sure, it wasn't always rainbows and unicorns, but it was very specialized and people knew that it wasn't art. So you usually had companies that had a UX designer and a separate visual or graphic or brand designer. And the UX designers were often called UX UI, which wasn't an insult at the time. And we were called UX architects because we focused more on information architecture and interaction design. And so imagine you're in this world where there's this very, very specialized job. And the people who are coming into it are generally either very experienced and or very well educated, because in 2013 there's no boot camps. There's no Google course. There's no boot camps. You either got a degree in this stuff or you kind of fell into it like I did, but you'd been doing it so long that by the time 2013 comes, I'm already semi-expert. So that makes it very rare and a very small world. And so as the demand for UX grew, salaries went up and people were like, oh my God, how do I get these amazing UX people into our company? And again, not everybody understood or appreciated us, and there were plenty of order taker jobs, but there was definitely, I think, better work and better jobs uh, 7, 10 years ago. Okay, fast forward. 2016-ish, boot camps explode. You start having lots of boot camps. People are coming out saying they're a UX designer in weeks. They're not. Many of them aren't that good. Some are great. Some are not good. They start getting hired because the job demand, there's more jobs than people. So when there's more jobs than people, salaries go up. It's very competitive. Companies are stealing people from each other, and everyone wants to get a piece of that action because the jobs are pretty stable, the money is really good, etc. But when everybody comes out of a boot camp weeks later and says, "Yep, I'm a UX designer too," and they come into companies and their work isn't as strong, it really changed how companies saw UX designers. A lot of these people were visual designers who wanted to put UX on their work because it would make them more money. There were even books coming out at the time saying, hey, visual designer, you don't have to go learn UX, just write UX on all the things that you do. Most companies can't tell the difference. And it really started decreasing the understanding of what we did. It decreased the specialty. I mean, imagine if you had a very specialized industry and no offense, but a whole bunch of fakers came in, or fakers till you makers came in, and people think that's what UX is. Yeah, we hired this UX person and they make all these pretty things, but they don't really do UX. So now what does your company think UX is? They think it's the person who makes pretty things. I mean, I've heard for years that, oh yeah, our UX people are artsy fartsy hipsters, they're divas. That's where low ego action heroes came from. We're the opposite. So now you have this total imbalance. Now we're at the point where what, 800,000 people have gone through the Google UX course and they're absolutely sure that they're ready to be a UX designer, and we're all competing against 800,000 people for like 10,000 jobs. So the demand is not higher now. It's lower now. Many of us just got laid off. the demand is lower. The demand is lower because for the past 5, 6 or so years, more and more companies think that you don't need UX people because they're just artsy fartsy people, and we can do what they do with a design sprint, or we can do what they do with some design thinking, or we can do what they do with just the product manager deciding what this is. Unfortunately, because so many inexperienced people came in and said, yep, I'm a UX designer, people changed how they saw me. They changed how they saw Larry Marine. They changed how they saw decently experienced people. Ana Lucia says, that's what happened with my original job. Everyone thinks they do it. Everyone. I know it's cool and super rewarding, but holy cannoli. Yeah. And this happens. And so Drew says Peter Merholtz was also saying companies were mainly looking for seniors because a senior could work independently, supplying a team of engineers. Well, yeah, the problem was that when all of these newbies sprung on the scene in like 2016, 2017, 2018, when the boot camps heated up and a lot of people were coming out of the boot camps, now all of a sudden you have more people than jobs. That means the competition isn't there. Companies can pick who they want. Companies can pay what they want because there's all these people. So pay started going down. And I'm talking like 2018, like even before the pandemic. And a lot of companies only wanted seniors because they didn't necessarily understand UX and they didn't want to train people. They just wanted someone who would come in and hit the ground running and know what to do. It was very easy for me to get work back in 2016, 17, 18. My email rang off the hook. My LinkedIn messages rang off the hook. Everybody wanted me for something. Sorry, the sun is getting brighter, but only on this side. I look weird. Sorry. So, and I've got a light on. It's not helping. Um, so again, this is the long story of this, but I want people to understand this. So the pandemic, a lot of people got laid off in the pandemic, down economic time, not specific to UX. But in the last year, I would say I think more UX people than average got laid off, and I think that bad UX leaders and other people have unfortunately done a very good job teaching companies they don't need us. If companies keep hearing just do design thinking, or we'll just run a design sprint, or whatever. And don't forget all of the fake agile. All the people who do fake agile say, hey, this doesn't have to be that great yet. We'll put it out and see what people think of it, which really isn't agile at all. That's not what agile is about. Agile is about delivering quality on a cadence. But someone read a wacky book about startups from 15 years ago and said, oh, we just have to get crap out there and we'll figure out later if anybody likes it. Nobody seems to be understanding that that's wasteful and doesn't make sense, but that also minimizes UX as well, because hey, if you're just going to release something and see what people think of it and try to fix it later, how much do you want UX to try to make it better? Who cares if it's better now? If your company doesn't care about quality, then it really doesn't need a lot of UX people or work. You're just going to come up with something, engineering's going to build it, you're going to put it out there, and then maybe we'll fix it later, maybe we don't. So unfortunately, between the flood of people and fake agile, and there's so many books and people out there who have just belittled us. They've minimized us. Shweta says, I met with a startup today that released an MVP designed by engineers, wanted a redesign, and then just said it needs to be good and we can revisit it. Yeah. Rocio says, I'm a big advocate for Agile. I've been pushing juniors like me to learn it. I think Agile at its foundations is a good idea. I think there's good things in the foundations of Agile, but when you see how Agile is done in a company, there's almost no care for quality. The only quality they seem to care about is our code buggy? If our code's not buggy, release it. We'll see what people think of it later. And it's amazing because the companies who admire people like Apple, oh yeah, we admire Apple. Apple's amazing. Well, Apple doesn't do this. Apple doesn't rush out MVPs. So we have all of these terrible things working against quality. As soon as we don't care about quality or the customer experience, why do we need UX people? And then, of course, bad UX leaders helped kind of put us out of business because they said, hey, we'll just all do a design sprint. Then everyone at the company said, well, we can do design sprints. We don't even need the UX people. So it's all of these things that have piled together, plus the bad economy we're in now, where a lot of companies don't know what UX people do. They knew 10 years ago. They don't know now. They think we show up and just make stuff pretty, and that we better make it pretty fast because we just want engineering to get it out, and we'll figure out later if anybody likes it and if it has any quality or value. This makes no sense, yet this is how people operate. Ana Lucia says, Agile appeared due to a need to be more efficient, more effective, and standardizing optimal processes. We can't forget this basis. That's right. At its foundation, Agile is a good idea. But how it's being done at most companies? Speed over quality, if you have quality at all. So yeah, and Shweta says Agile can be focused on experimentation and iteration, but companies aren't even doing that. So ultimately, for the person who asked the question, I think there's a combination of things that have really killed the market for UX jobs. I think we're finally seeing, or we're going to see, the correction that I predicted 3 or so years ago. Some of you have read my Medium article about the coming UX correction. And I think we're in that correction now. And to me, the correction is when people who shouldn't work in UX and don't really want to work in UX but got into it thinking it was going to be really stable and make a lot of money, will walk away and pick something else. And that'll be some of you, and I'll miss you. But I think a lot of you, if you're watching this channel, that won't be you. You're going to keep trying because it's in your blood. But I think there's 800,000 people out there who took the Google UX course because they heard UX was a cool, fun, creative job where you made endless money and it was just so cool and fun. And now they're seeing there's no jobs. The salaries are going down. It's super competitive. When they do get a job, they're not enjoying it. And that's what I'm calling the correction. The correction will be all the people who got into it because it seemed cool and a mountain of money and stable will now see that it's not a mountain of money, it's not stable, and there's a lot of bad stuff about it. So let's see. And we've got an question from Jan. We will put your question on the end. There's some people before you, so please be patient. Okay, we have Chi Huat's question. Sorry to take so long to get to you, and I will stay late to make sure we get all the questions answered. Chi Huat says, the more I read, the more confused I get about HCI and design thinking. Is there an easier way to clear my mind about these? So I think the best way that I can explain this is that design thinking is a derivative of human-centered design. You have human-centered design, and I don't have my effects today, but you have human-centered design as the process that most of us do. Solid research, content strategy and writing, information architecture, interaction design and prototyping, testing and improving it, visual design and branding, monitoring it after release. We have a whole thing. Human-centered design has ISO standards. Human-centered design is a real thing. In 2003, IDEO wanted something they could package up and sell so that they could make money selling a thing and selling training and workshops. Because let's face it, there's so much money in training and workshops, y'all don't even want to know. Some of the people you know I dislike, I've heard they make $30,000 a day doing this stuff. A day! Some people would be lucky to make that in a year. So there is wild money to be made in training and workshops, especially when you charge that much. So, design thinking was invented. The name had been floating around for a while, but then IDEO kind of grabbed it in 2003 and they said, okay, we're going to just really super boil down human-centered design into these 5 easy steps that anybody can do with these workshops and games, and they'll have to take our training and get our certificate, and then we'll teach people to be trainers, and they'll train other people, and it'll be this whole, multiverse. And that's where we've ended up. Although, design thinking is still highly controversial, human-centered design is controversial in spots, but ultimately, human-centered design is what it is. It's fluid, it works, it doesn't need to be boiled down to design thinking. And so ultimately, design thinking before IDEO was just human-centered design. Design thinking after IDEO is this really microscopic, boiled down fake UX that you can just do in hours or days as team workshops, and everyone can pretend to be a researcher, everyone can pretend to be a designer, and that's how we're going to come up with our stuff. And it's a cousin at this point of design sprints. So that hopefully that helps you tell the difference. Okay, we got this question in the chat, though I apologize, I forgot who asked it. It was a new person, Chantel. We're on the cusp of getting a UX research platform. We will be given 2 licenses, one for UX and the other for CX. Data team, we're split in our org. What's the best way to work and research together? Totally impossible to answer because I can't say, oh, no matter what type of company you are, and no matter what type of users or customers or partners or ecosystem you have, this is the best way to work and research together. I can only say that the best way to do anything together is through planning and collaborating early during planning. Hey, we're going to research how consumers perceive our pricing to help out the marketing team. Hey, we're going to research how our B2B customers feel about this other thing. Okay, cool. We're doing different research. Great. Let's plan it out and run some quadrant exercises from episode 190, and then we'll make sure that we share all of our findings and video clips and insights and suggestions and recommendations, make recommendations, have an opinion. So I can't say, hey, because I don't know how your teams are structured. I don't know how many people there are. I don't know how many products you're supporting. So unfortunately, this is not a question that I can answer, by saying, oh, always do this. I can only say that this is something that you have to plan at multiple levels. And sounds like that research and other things should be planned and roadmapped so that you know who's doing different research projects and what other things they're going to touch. But yeah, I'm sorry. I really can't answer this one and just say everybody should always do this. Maybe Chantel should contact me privately and I can try to give you a better answer with a lot more information and context. Okay, and our last question today from Jan, thank you for your question, welcome to the show, says, I'm a senior user researcher, usually working on my own or leading small teams, and I'm looking to continue to grow as a UX professional. I'm going through NNG courses to get the Master of UX certification specialization in UX research, but aside from that, how should I pick? What should I pick? To learn next to stay competitive. Should I pursue what seems hot like ethnography or AI, or is there a better method? Okay, so first of all, I hope your company is paying for the NNG courses because they're really expensive. And ultimately, I think unless you specifically live in a country or region that loves certifications, then it might not have value. For example, in America, an NNG certification looks cool, but it doesn't necessarily have high value. Thanks, Chantel. It doesn't necessarily have high value. I wouldn't look at your CV or resume and go, oh, wow, this person got the NNG master certification. They must be amazing. Unfortunately, you can get an NNG master certification by passing a bunch of multiple choice tests. So I don't even know. You might be a terrible UX or user researcher, but you took some good multiple choice tests. So to me, I come from a part of the world where a lot of those certifications aren't fantastically well respected. They might be fun to get and you might be proud of them. It doesn't change that. Maybe you learn some things. Doesn't change that. But I don't really see at least Americans as being like, oh, wow, this person has this certification. Everybody jump. But I do hear that other countries are like, oh, wow, certifications. We really care. Now, the question of what should you learn next, what I tell people is go to LinkedIn and start looking at open jobs and look for jobs that sound great to you, whether they're senior researcher or lead researcher or principal researcher or research manager, and take a look at what they expect you to know to qualify for that job. Do that. Do your own research. Make notes, make a matrix. Take a look at what companies expect you to know to get these jobs that to you look like where you want to go next. And that will tell you what to learn. If a lot of them are saying, gee, we really want to see more people doing quant with statistical calculations, then you make sure that you've taken some statistics classes and that you can show that you know how to do that. If they say we're looking for people with certain certifications, you pursue those certifications. So I think you just have to look at jobs that look to you like your next step. And don't worry about what's hot or not, because things that are hot change. I would say take a look at jobs that to you look like jobs you'd like to move into and reverse engineer those jobs. What skills are they looking for? How often do you see the same skill or tool or other thing mentioned? And how can you make sure that you level up in that? Do they talk about being able to use Excel and pivot tables? Learn that. Is it more quant stuff and analysis? Learn that. So again, I can't say there's one thing like everyone should go learn ethnography or everyone should go learn AI. That this stuff is all going to be evolving by the time you learn it. I remember I once started a master's degree in e-commerce and I realized by the time I would finish it, e-commerce wouldn't be the same animal. This was 2003, so I dropped it. So I would just say, look at the jobs that interest you. Look at the skills, tools, and other things they're expecting you to show competency or proficiency with, and jump on those. Makes so much sense. Thank you. Well, thanks to you and good luck. So that closes out our show, everybody. Again, pretty much every Tuesday, I'm here taking your questions live. All questions are welcome. Note that in the future, the time of the show will change. We're going to be doing it a few hours earlier because I hope to be starting a job soon. We still don't have the exact start date, but it's probably going to be in July. And that would mean because I'd be working right now, we'd have to move the shows earlier before my workday starts. So just take a look at the Google Calendar at deltacx.com/links and check for times and things like that. And good news for Chihuat, who always hopes our shows will be earlier. They will be earlier, starting in less than 2 weeks. So I'm going to play us out of here, and let's see. Our next show is Friday. Friday we're doing at a weird time, 5 o'clock Italy time, 5 p.m. We're doing a special AMA with Stephanie Walter live from her home office because we're going to see her. So if you have questions for me or Stephanie, send them on in. We'll do them on Friday's show. Oh, and looking forward to Space in July. Yes, if you haven't signed up for my workshop yet, check it out at cxcc.to/space. SPACE. It's my strategizing products and customer experiences workshop. It's only $99 American for 3 half days, and it's the companion to my new book, Customers Know You Suck. So you can still sign up. I think we have about 10 people signed up for each one, so it's still a small group and super friendly. All right, everybody, be well. Have a good few days until I see you on Friday from Stephanie's place. Thanks. Bye. Customer centricity as business intelligence. Visit deltacx.com to learn why we are